Hi there, and with LEGO announcing this week that they're going to be releasing a blue upscaled LEGO Spaceman, today we're going to be looking at that set and also building a blue upscaled LEGO Space Baby to go with my other three. So yes, really exciting news this week. After LEGO first released the upscaled classic minifigure and the two upscaled Harry Potter figures, and then that exclusive upscaled pirate figure, which you can only buy at the LEGO house in Denmark, and then last year the upscaled Octan racing driver, LEGO are finally now going to release an upscaled classic spaceman. And of course, true to form, the colour that LEGO have chosen to do the upscaled spaceman in is blue. Now, as soon as the news was out, I got many comments from viewers making sure that I'd heard about it. And I'd actually heard a leak about it the week before. I'd heard that the next upscaled figure was going to be a spaceman, but I didn't know the colour. And you can guarantee 9 AM, March the 1st, I'll be there outside my local LEGO store, waiting in line to try and get myself one of the first ones. And as soon as I've got it in hand, I'm going to build it straight away, and I'll make a video comparing it with the white upscaled classic spaceman which I built last year when I built my giant upscaled classic space buggy. Now, as for the space babies, LEGO have only made those with the baby face in pink and blue, but they've also made the micro astronaut with the classic smiley face in white. Then the next size up, they made a blue space baby keyring, which is also a torch. But as for upscaled space babies, LEGO have only made the red one. And of course I modified that and duplicated the design last year in black and white. And at the time, because of the parts used, I said that the only colours we could make it in were black, white, light bluish grey and yellow. And that's still the case today, you can only make it in those 5 colours. However, I've gone through the parts list and I've made a few part substitutions, and today we're going to make a blue upscaled space baby in preparation for his dad arriving on March the 1st. But just before we look at the new upscaled blue spaceman and build the blue space baby, a very quick shout out to my channel members. Thank you so much for your support, it really is appreciated. And if anyone else is interested in becoming a channel member and getting their name when I break in my videos, you can click on the join button below this video or the link in the description, and that'll tell you how. And also thank you to everyone who's given me super thanks in the chats this week. All these funds really help out the channel and go straight towards buying parts for all my videos. Or an alternative way to support the channel, if you're ever buying from lego.com, please use my affiliate link in the description below. It doesn't cost you any extra, but LEGO give me a very small commission on everything that people buy. So thanks again to everyone who supports the channel, but let's look at that blue spaceman. Now, when I built my white classic spaceman last year, the torso, arms and legs were taken straight from LEGO's own designs. And because at the time I was up to my ears in designing the upscaled classic space buggy and was trying to rush that out ready for my first LEGO show, I used someone else's design for the helmet and the air tanks. Now, I was never truly happy with the style of the white air tanks. It used 4x4 round bricks, however it used a 2-stud wide brick panel in between them. Now, for the air tanks which I built for the front of the upscaled space buggy, I also used 4x4 round bricks. However, I butted them right up against each other because that's how I thought the air tanks more looked in real life. And as you can see, the minifig version is the same with no gap in between the tanks. The other thing I did slightly differently was try and replicate that curve on the top of the tanks, and I did that by using 4x4 round dish pieces. Now, on LEGO's version it looks like they're using 2x2 macaroni bricks, but they've also got a row of regular bricks in between them. So they're either going to be 4x5 studs in a sort of oval shape, or they're going to be 5x5. And I'm not entirely sure how I feel about that. It may well be that that's actually more true to size in 6x1 scale. However, I think I prefer the look of a 4x4 true cylinder. Then moving on to the helmet, LEGO's new blue helmet is a lot more chunky than the white one which I made. First of all, the chin strap is twice as thick. It's 2 studs wide as opposed to the 1 stud wide version which I used. Then secondly, the actual dome of the helmet seems a lot taller. However, there is a reason for that. And that's because if you lift the top of the helmet off, inside there's a tiny classic space robot controlling the blue spaceman, in the same way that we had a regular minifigure inside the hat of the first upscaled minifig set. Now, I've had a lot of people commenting how disappointing it is that they aren't giving us a blue classic spaceman inside. However, LEGO are far too sneaky for that, and they wouldn't give us a blue classic spaceman that easily. But I have also had a lot of comments saying maybe I could also upscale the classic space robot from inside, and I definitely think that is a really good idea. So that is now down on my list of things to make, so look out for it in a future video. Now, when the red space baby first came out, I made a video making some modifications to it, and the major one was that when LEGO made it, they gave it a solid base like this, which meant it couldn't sit on a upscaled studded base like this. So I made alternate legs with a hollow indent in the middle which could sit on a studded surface. And I made my black and white versions in the same way. So they're now true to the actual Space Babies and can sit on a single stud. Another modification which I made, which you can do yourself if you've got this set, is fill in this gap just underneath the arm here where there's a stud, using one of these 1x2 tiles with the 45-degree cutoff, and they fit nicely there and give the arm a smoothed off finish. I also smoothed off a few other studs on the side of the body. First of all, this single 1x1 plate above the arm, which I replaced for a 1x1 tile, and then secondly the two studs sticking out from that 2x3 plate behind this wedge plate. And you can see on my version there's no studs there, and if we take off that wedge plate, you can see I replaced the 2x3 plate with a 1x3 plate and a 1x3 tile. So when the wedge plate sits on top, it still connects to those studs, however we got a smooth surface behind. So if you want to build an upscaled blue Space Baby yourself, I'm going to take you through how I build my own version of the legs, and then the majority of the build will be exactly as per the Lego instructions, apart from those few modifications that I've just shown you on the side. However, I will stop and show you the modifications I've had to make at the top of the air tanks, and also the rather drastic reshaping of the helmet. So for the legs, first of all we're going to start off with a 1x1 brackets with two studs sticking up in the air, and on front of that we're going to put a 1x2 brick and a 1x2 tile. And then we're going to turn that 90 degrees and add a 1x4 brick like that. And underneath that we're going to put a 1x1 plate and a 1x4 plate like that. And on top we're putting a 1x1 tile, then a 1x1 brick just behind. Then we're going to build exactly the same, only in reverse, so the bracket faces the other way. So we've got two pieces in mirror image like that. Then we're going to join those together with a 1x6 brick at the back like that, and then a 1x6 plate at the front there. I'm going to fill in the big gap with a 4x6 plate like that. And the last thing to do, fill up this gap here with a 1x4. And we've got exactly the same legs as I had for my red Space Baby. And then we're going to follow steps 11, 12 and 13 exactly as the Lego instructions show, building this structure which sits on top like that. However, when we get to step 14, we have to do a part substitution, because this brick, which is the 1x2 by 1 2/3 with 4 studs on the side, doesn't exist in blue. But fortunately, the 1x1 by 1 2/3 does exist in blue, so we can just replace the 2 stud wide brick for 2 of these. And as you can see from the number of those that I've bought, we're going to be doing that an awful lot during this build. So step 15 just adds a couple of 2x3 bricks, and then step 16 we need a lot more of those blue snot bricks, and we end up with a piece looking like this. 17 adds more snot bricks in blue and any random colour you've got. 18 adds a regular 2x3 plate and brick in the middle. Then at 19, any coloured random snot brick and some more of those 1x2 blue ones, and we end up looking like this, or that in real life. Now step 20 is where we add the logo on the front. And here's where we've got a choice to make. Now in the actual set, Lego give us a 2x4 printed tile with the space logo on. And for my black and white versions, I used a sticker which came on the Lego set Benny's Spaceship, Spaceship, Spaceship. And they came on the tail of the spaceship. Unfortunately, the sticker was on a clear background, so you can peel them off and add them to any coloured tile. And as it's a Lego sticker, you can see the quality is superb and it's almost exactly the same size. So for our blue Space Baby, we can do exactly the same. I can peel one of these stickers off another tile which I've got many of and add it to a regular blue 2x4 tile. However, also in Benny's spaceship set was a 2x4 blue printed tile, and just so happens it has a classic space logo on it. Now this is beautifully printed. You can actually see the craters and the shading on the gold part of the planet and the bottom corner. However, if you compare it with the red tile, it is a lot bigger. So our options are a slightly smaller logo using a sticker, or a slightly larger logo using that nice printed piece. And even though using the stickered version would match my black and my white Space Babies, I think because this piece exists, we've got to use that in this build. And yes, even though it's slightly too big, I do think that does look pretty good. Step 21 adds a 1x4 tile and an awful lot of 1x2 jumpers on the top, like this. But step 22 is where we have to make another one of our modifications. We put a 1x4 tile at the bottom, like the instructions. However, like I said earlier, instead of having a 2x3 plate at the top, we have a 1x3 plate here and a 1x3 tile behind it. Now it's only held on by one stud, but when the air tanks are on, that gets held in place. It also gets held in place by the wedge plate which sits in front of it. Now in step 23, LEGO add 3 1x3 jumpers and a 1x1 plate. However, like I mentioned earlier, we're going to do the jumpers, however, not a 1x1 plate, we're going to add a 1x1 tile. And in the next step 24, we just add that wedge plate behind everything. Now building the arm, we follow exactly the same as the LEGO instructions on 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30, 31, 32, 33 and 34, but then we want to add our extra tile, which is that 1x2 tile with the 45-degree cut-off, and that goes on the spare stud underneath the arm, and that just smooths it off. And then it's ready to add onto the side of our space baby. And then steps 36 to 38, we do exactly the same on the other side, finishing up adding that wedge plate on the back. And then steps 39 to 48, build the other arm exactly as we did before, and we finish that off by adding our own 1x2 tile with the cutoff. And then we finish the body on step 50 with 2 plates and 2 curved bricks by building the hands. And we've got a headless space baby ready to start building the helmet, where we're going to have some fairly major changes. So we start building the head and the helmet as per the LEGO instructions. However, they've used a 4x4 plate and a 1x4 plate underneath in any old colour. Now when you turn the space baby upside down, you can actually see those parts. So in this version I'm using the same colour as my baby itself, so in this case blue. However, as you can see on top, I am using some fairly horrifically sun damaged parts to go inside his head. Now all the way from 56 to 62 we do exactly as the LEGO instructions show, but we make a small change when we get to step 63, and that's with this 1x3 plate at the bottom. Now when the helmet is finished, that 1x3 plate is actually visible if you turn the space baby upside down, so I don't want to use any old colour, I want to use the same colour as the baby itself. So obviously on my version I'm going to use a blue 1x3. Next we build the curve on the back of the helmet, which ends up looking like this. Then we spin it around and add a plate and some snot bricks on the front, and some large colour matched brackets on the sides. Now again, in step 69, LEGO are using a 2x4 plate in any old colour. However, when you turn the helmet upside down, again, you can see that plate. So I'm using blue again. And with another 1x4 tile and some curved slopes, we've got the curve on the side of the helmet. Now in steps 71 up to 76, we start to build up the face, using a lot of yellow jumper plates. Then we get to step 77 where we add the face itself. Now I always keep an eye out on the pick-a-brick section of Lego.com, and as soon as I saw the space baby faces appear, I stocked up. So I've got plenty of eyes and plenty of mouths to make many colours of space baby. I've also got lots of faces to make upscaled minifigures. Now when I made my black and my white versions, those parts weren't actually available on pick-a-brick yet. So if I catch the light at the right angle, you'll actually see that these are stickers. There's 2 black round stickers with white stickers in the middle and a curvy black sticker underneath. And from a distance you can hardly tell, but now I've got so many I could probably swap these over for printed pieces. But for our blue baby we don't have to go through the stickered phase. I've already got lots of them, so we can go straight to the printed ones. And by turning one upside down you could also make a sad space baby. But we don't like sad things on this channel, so we're going to make him happy. Now starting on the chin strap below the face, we've got this 1x5 plate, and we can't get that in blue, so I've got a 1x2 and a 1x3 plate underneath instead. And then we continue adding the parts as per the instructions up to step 81, where we finish the face and we can add it to the front of our helmet, like that. Then we add some curved slopes and a tile to the side of the helmet to give it that classic shape. And then in 85, 86, 87 and 88 we do exactly the same to the other side, so we've got the helmet built up on both sides. And then from 89 through 90 to 91 we start building up the interior structure of the helmet, until we can add the central curves to the helmet, but this is where we have to get creative. Now in the LEGO instructions next, all we do is add this giant quarter dome piece, but as I said before, this doesn't exist in blue. Now the only 3x3 curved piece with a slope on top is this piece here. Now the red one is 2 bricks high, however this one is only 1 brick high. Now in Bricklink Studio I tried padding it out underneath with these 3x3 plates with the curved corner. However, as you can see, they stuck out too far and just didn't look right. So the compromise was using these 3x3 wedge plates, and now when you put the curve on top it doesn't stick out, however you do get a slight indent, but this was much preferable to using the curved version. So as this dome piece is 1 brick tall and we're trying to match a brick which is 2 bricks tall, we're going to use 3 of those wedge plates on top of each other, which is obviously the same height as a brick. Add the dome to the top, and that's going to be our finished look. And then we're going to add 4 of those, or 4 of those in total, 3 more around the edges. So yes, it's not perfect, but I think it's the best we can do. However, if you think you can come up with a better solution, please let me know in the comments. And then once we've added a 1x3 plate and 2 1x1 plates on top, we're ready to add the head on top of the body, like that. Then the air tanks start at step 97 and we go all the way through to step 111 where we pause for a second. And once again in those steps where LEGO were using any old colour 1x4s, I've used blue ones because you can see them when you turn the air tanks upside down. But the reason that we're pausing at step 111 is that we now need to add in some 1x1 quarter dome pieces. Now when the red Space Baby came out, those didn't exist in blue, and I was imagining we were going to have to use another cheese slope like this on the corner, and it wouldn't be curved, it would just be going in one direction. However, they have now been released, so fortunately I've got 4 of those. We can put them in the corners of the air tanks and they look just like the red ones. And then finally the very last step, 112, to finish off the top of the air tanks, we need this 1x4 plate with curved ends on it, and again that doesn't exist in blue. So to get those curved ends, instead of using one 1x4 plate, we're going to use 2 1x2 plates which have curved ends on them. So from the top it looks identical, but if you turn it over you can see the slight gap underneath, and because it's made from 2 plates instead of 1, it is slightly more wobbly. However, it still fits on top and looks just as good. And then lastly we need to just add the air tanks onto the back of the Space Baby. And here he is with all his friends. He's not a perfect copy, but I think he's the best we can do at the moment with the parts that we've got available in blue. And they're all looking so happy because they all know that they've only got a few weeks to wait until March the 1st when the blue upscaled spaceman arrives. So as always, let me know what you think in the comments below. I still manage to reply to every single comment that I get, and I love hearing what you think and chatting with you in the comments. If you'd like to support the channel, there's a few ways you can do it. You could consider becoming a channel member and getting your name on a brick in my videos. You could give me a super thanks in the comments below, or if you're buying from lego.com you could use my Lego affiliate link in the description below. But above everything else, if you haven't done so already, please subscribe for more Lego videos.